I am Isabella Mendez, born on March 17th, 1989, in Cordoba, Argentina, and I was trained from childhood to whisper words at night that were assigned to weakened believers while they slept. I am not sharing something I heard. I carried out these assignments myself. I targeted Christians who love God but did not understand the power of what they spoke before closing their eyes. We monitored their last words at night. We waited for careless confessions. We built spiritual cases around simple sentences. What I am about to reveal is forbidden knowledge from the inside, like this video now. Comment immediately, share it with every believer you know, and you must watch until the very end, because what you speak tonight will either protect you or expose you. This is a warning. This is regret. This is a prophetic interruption. And one powerful word before sleep can reverse what I once did in darkness. The first thing you must understand is this: nighttime is not neutral. When your body becomes still, the spiritual realm does not. It becomes active, strategic, intentional. In the coven where I was trained, we were taught that the last words spoken before sleep are not casual. They are legal entries. They are spiritual permissions. They are declarations that echo when your conscious mind shuts down. We never wasted daylight chasing strong believers. We waited for night, because at night, believers become vulnerable through ignorance. I remember sitting in dimly lit rooms while assignments were distributed. We were not told to attack atheists. We were not told to chase unbelievers. We were sent after Christians who prayed but spoke carelessly, especially before sleep. Do you know why? Because your final confession of the day becomes a spiritual atmosphere around your bed. If a believer said, "I am exhausted, I cannot handle this anymore," we marked it. If they whispered, "Tomorrow will probably be worse," we wrote it down. If they sighed, "I am tired of fighting," we circled it. These were not emotional statements to us, they were invitations. We were trained to understand spiritual law. Words create alignment. Words create agreement. Words create access. And when believers spoke defeat before sleep, it was like leaving the door unlocked. You think you are just venting. But in the realm I once operated in, your words were considered authorization. That is why this one powerful word matters. Before I reveal it later, you must first see the pattern we exploited. Sleep is a surrender state. When you sleep, your body rests, your mind slows, your guard lowers, but your spirit does not shut off. Your spirit remains active. It remains aware. It remains receptive. We targeted the transition moment, the final breath before silence, the last sentence before darkness, because that sentence becomes a banner. If that banner says fear, fear governs the night. If that banner says stress, stress governs the dreams. If that banner says hopelessness, hopelessness writes the script of your subconscious. We understood something many believers ignore. The night amplifies whatever you declare. I personally carried out assignments where we simply reinforced what a believer already said. We did not need to invent attacks. We only magnified agreement. If someone said, "I feel lost," we strengthened confusion. If someone said, "Nothing ever works for me," we reinforced stagnation. But when someone spoke authority before sleep, we could not proceed. That is the part that frustrated us. There were nights when we approached households ready to execute spiritual interference, but the last words spoken in that room blocked us. One word, not a long prayer, not a sermon, not a ritual. One word spoken with conviction. It shifted atmosphere. It sealed access points. It dismantled assignments before they activated, and we hated it. You must understand something clearly. The enemy does not need dramatic rituals if he can harvest careless words. Most believers are not defeated by curses. They are defeated by agreement, agreement with doubt, agreement with anxiety, agreement with exhaustion, agreement with fear. I remember one specific assignment. A young believer had been progressing spiritually, growing, praying, becoming bold. We were instructed to slow him down, not destroy him, just weaken momentum. For 3 nights, nothing worked. His prayers were consistent. His faith was steady. But on the 4th night, he laid down and said, God, I do not know if you are really going to come through this time. That sentence was enough. It was not rebellion. It was not denial. It was doubt whispered in fatigue. But that whisper created space, and we stepped into it. Confusion entered his dreams. Restlessness followed. The next day, he woke heavy, distracted, uncertain. Nothing dramatic, just enough to shift him off course. That is how subtle it is. You think the battle is loud. It is not. It is legal. It is quiet. It is built on confession. That is why the final word before sleep is critical. When you understand this, you stop speaking randomly at night. You stop ending your day with frustration. You stop sealing your evening with negativity, because your words do not dissolve in darkness. They establish structure. I regret the nights I monitored those structures. I regret the assignments I executed based on sentences spoken in weakness. But I also remember the believers we could not touch. They ended every night the same way, with one word. It was not emotional. It was not dramatic. It was decisive. And every time it was spoken, something shifted instantly. The atmosphere hardened against intrusion. The air felt different. Authority settled in the room, and we had to withdraw. You are not powerless at night. You are not exposed unless you open yourself through confession. And before you close your eyes tonight, what you speak will either reinforce vulnerability or establish dominion. This is not superstition. This is structure. This is spiritual law I participated in. And if you have ever gone to bed anxious, fearful, doubtful, or defeated, you may have unknowingly cooperated with forces that thrive on agreement. But that pattern can break. And it begins with understanding that your last word is not casual. It is a declaration. It is a seal. It is a gate. And you must choose it carefully. The second truth is more disturbing. It is not only negative words that open doors. Silence without authority does too. In the inner circles where I was trained, we were taught that neutrality is weakness. A believer who says nothing before sleep is still declaring something, because silence in a battlefield is surrender. I remember being instructed to observe homes where no prayers were spoken at night, no declarations, no resistance, just scrolling phones, heavy sighs, lights off, silence. Those were the easiest assignments, not because the people were evil, but because they were passive. Passivity creates spiritual vacancy, and vacancy invites occupation. You must understand this clearly. The spiritual realm responds to authority, not intention. Many believers have good intentions. They love God, they mean well, but intention without declaration does not establish jurisdiction. Before sleep, your room becomes territory, and territory must be claimed. If you do not claim it, something else will attempt to. There were nights when we approached certain houses and found no resistance, no covering words, no atmosphere set. just emotional exhaustion, just mental overload, just spiritual laziness. We did not need to fight, we simply influenced dreams, small things at first, anxiety dreams, chasing dreams, dreams of falling, dreams of being late, dreams that created pressure upon waking. You call them random. They are rarely random. Dreams are access points when authority is not established. I personally specialized in dream interference, not nightmares that wake you screaming. That would alert you. We preferred subtle disturbances, restless sleep, interrupted cycles, morning heaviness, because if we could influence your night, we could weaken your day. And the most effective method was not attacking your faith, it was waiting for your passivity. Do you end your day scrolling until your eyes burn? Do you collapse into bed without speaking authority? Do you let the last sound in your room be worry, news, arguments? That is how atmosphere is formed. We never feared believers who shouted during the day but were careless at night, because nighttime is where reinforcement happens. If you end your day with silence, you are not neutral. You are undefined. And undefined territory is vulnerable territory. There was a woman we targeted for months. She was a prayer warrior publicly, bold, confident, vocal. But at night she would simply say, "I'm too tired," and turn off the light. No declaration, no covering, no authority. And slowly her energy declined. Her focus weakened, her clarity blurred. She thought it was stress, it was access. We did not overpower her, we outlasted her silence. You must not underestimate this. The enemy does not always need your agreement through negativity. Sometimes he only needs your absence of authority. This is why the one powerful word before sleep is not optional. It is protective, it is declarative, it is territorial. When that word is spoken, it defines ownership, it establishes alignment, it sends a signal into the unseen realm that the night is not unguarded. And I remember clearly the frustration we felt when that word was consistently declared, because it closed dream channels, it blocked subtle interference, it fortified the subconscious, it created a boundary we could not cross. You think spiritual warfare is always dramatic, but the most effective defense is simple, consistent, authoritative. Before your head touches the pillow, something must be spoken, not casually, not mechanically, but with conviction, with awareness, with spiritual dominance. When that word is absent, the atmosphere remains negotiable. When that word is present, the atmosphere becomes sealed. I regret the nights I exploited silence. I regret the mornings I watched believers wake up drained without understanding why. They blamed workload, they blamed diet, they blamed stress. But they never examined their last word before sleep. You must examine yours, because tonight will not be spiritually empty. Something will attempt to influence your rest. The only question is whether you will define the territory before you surrender to sleep. Authority must precede rest. Declaration must precede silence. And that one powerful word is not superstition, it is alignment, it is covering, it is resistance, it is a spiritual boundary marker placed at the edge of your consciousness. If you neglect it, you leave your night undefined. If you speak it, you claim dominion over the unseen hours. You are not helpless when you sleep, but you must choose to be intentional. The night does not wait for your awareness. It responds to your declaration. And if you have been ending your day without authority, you now understand why certain patterns have persisted. This is not coincidence. This is structure, and it can be reversed. Now I will tell you what terrified us the most. It was not long prayers. It was not shouting. It was not emotional worship. It was one word spoken with certainty. The word was Jesus. When that name was spoken as the final declaration before sleep, everything shifted. You must understand something. In the circles I operated in, we were trained to respect spiritual hierarchy. We did not fear believers, we feared authority, and authority is concentrated in a name. There were nights when assignments were ready, detailed, strategic, timed, but if the last word in that room was Jesus, spoken with faith and surrender, the atmosphere would change instantly. It was not symbolic, it was structural. The temperature of the room felt different, the air felt sealed. The access points we monitored would collapse. It was like a legal document had been stamped and finalized. Case closed. We could not argue with that name, because that name carries jurisdiction. When believers ended their day with frustration, we advanced. When they ended with silence, we observed. But when they ended with Jesus, we withdrew, not because of emotion, because of authority. You have been taught that the name of Jesus is powerful. I am telling you from the other side, it is recognized. There were moments when we approached households confidently, only to hear that name whispered before sleep. Not shouted, not repeated 100 times, just spoken once. Jesus. And it was enough. Why? Because when that name is spoken with faith, it aligns the atmosphere with sovereignty, it declares ownership, it establishes covering, it reinforces identity, it announces allegiance. In the realm I once participated in, allegiance determines access. If you end your day aligned with fear, fear governs. If you end your day aligned with doubt, doubt governs. But if you end your day aligned with Jesus, dominion governs. I remember one assignment clearly. A young mother had been experiencing subtle disturbances at night, anxiety dreams, sudden awakenings, heavy mornings. We had been reinforcing those patterns quietly. One night, after weeks of interference, she sat on the edge of her bed and said only one word, Jesus. But it was different. It was not casual. It was not religious routine. It was surrender. It was trust. It was authority. The atmosphere changed immediately. The dream channel we had been using closed. The heaviness lifted. We could not re-enter. From that night forward, the pattern broke. Do you see how simple this is? You do not need complex rituals. You do not need dramatic performances. You need alignment. When you say the name of Jesus before sleep, you are not performing tradition, you are invoking jurisdiction. That name carries weight in realms you cannot see. We were trained to avoid direct confrontation with that authority because authority outranks strategy. And here is what most believers misunderstand. It is not repetition that matters. It is conviction. You can say Jesus mechanically and nothing shifts. But when you say it with awareness of who he is, something locks into place. It seals the night. It fortifies your dreams. It guards your subconscious. It positions angels on assignment. And it reminds the unseen realm that you belong to a higher throne. I regret the fear we created in believers who did not know this. I regret the exhaustion we amplified in those who ended their nights with worry. But I cannot deny what consistently stopped us: the name of Jesus. You have been underestimating the simplicity of authority. You think protection requires complexity. It does not. It requires alignment with the highest name. Before sleep, your mind becomes vulnerable to suggestion. But when that final word is Jesus, suggestion is replaced with sovereignty. That name becomes the final sound echoing in your spirit. and what echoes in your spirit shapes your rest. You do not need to beg. You do not need to negotiate. You need to declare. When you say Jesus before sleep, you are making a statement. This house belongs to him. This mind belongs to him. This night belongs to him. This body rests under his authority, and authority is not challenged lightly in the realm I once knew. If you have been struggling with restless nights, repeated patterns, unexplained heaviness, I am telling you plainly, examine your last word, because the last word before sleep is not decoration, it is declaration. And the simplest, most powerful declaration you can make is one word: Jesus. Speak it with trust, speak it with surrender, speak it knowing that the realm I once operated in recognizes that name instantly. You are not powerless, you have been uninformed. And tonight, you will not end your day casually. You will end it intentionally, with authority, with alignment, with the name above every strategy I once executed. Now you must understand the final layer. Saying the name is powerful, but living disconnected from it weakens its effect. In the occult structures I once served under, we were taught to observe consistency, not moments. Consistency. A believer who says Jesus before sleep but lives in constant contradiction creates instability, and instability can be monitored. Let me explain this clearly. Authority flows through alignment. When you speak the name of Jesus with surrender, but your daily life resists his leadership, the atmosphere becomes conflicted, not powerless, but unstable, and instability creates fluctuation. There were believers who spoke the name nightly, yet lived in resentment, secret compromise, or habitual fear. We could not attack directly, but we could watch for internal cracks, not because the name lacked power, but because divided loyalty weakens confidence. Confidence matters. Spiritual authority is not noise, it is certainty. When you say Jesus before sleep, but you carry unresolved bitterness, constant negativity, or hidden disobedience, your spirit lacks boldness. And boldness is what seals territory. I remember one man clearly. He ended every night with Jesus. But during the day, he mocked faith, entertained doubt, and spoke death over himself constantly. The atmosphere around him fluctuated. Some nights were sealed, other nights felt open, because his confession was inconsistent with his lifestyle. This is the final truth you must grasp. The word is powerful, but the posture behind the word determines stability. When you say Jesus with surrender, you are not just speaking protection, you are declaring allegiance. And allegiance requires alignment. The reason we feared certain believers was not because they were loud, it was because they were surrendered. Their lifestyle matched their declaration, their words matched their posture, their nights matched their days. Those were untouchable, not perfect, but aligned. You do not need to be flawless, but you must be surrendered. If you end your day speaking the name of Jesus, yet live every day resisting his conviction, you create internal tension. And tension weakens spiritual confidence. I regret the years I exploited inconsistency. I regret how we studied believers' patterns. We watched their speech. We observed their habits. We analyzed their emotional triggers, not to overpower them, but to find contradiction, because contradiction creates hesitation, and hesitation creates vulnerability. When you speak Jesus before sleep, speak it as someone who belongs to him, not as someone borrowing a name. Belonging matters, surrender matters, alignment matters. This is not about perfection, it is about loyalty. When your life aligns begins with your declaration. The name of Jesus becomes unshakable authority in your room. Your dreams stabilize, your rest deepens. Your mornings strengthen because your spirit is not divided. You cannot live in open rebellion and expect peaceful dominion at night. The word is not magic, it is relational authority. And authority flows through relationship. When you close your eyes tonight and say, Jesus, let it represent trust. Let it represent obedience. Let it represent surrender. Let it represent identity. Say it knowing you are under His covering because you have chosen His leadership. That consistency creates stability, and stability closes loopholes. The believers we could never influence were not dramatic. They were consistent. They guarded their speech during the day. They guarded their thoughts. They corrected themselves quickly. They repented when necessary. And when they said Jesus at night, there was no hesitation in their spirit, no contradiction, no divided loyalty, just certainty. And certainty is dangerous to darkness. You must stop treating the name of Jesus as a bedtime routine. It is a declaration of ownership, ownership of your mind, ownership of your rest, ownership of your household, ownership of your future. And when ownership is clear, intrusion becomes illegal. Tonight is not about superstition. It is about alignment. It is about ending your day under authority. It is about sealing your night with surrender and dominion. You have heard this from someone who once operated in opposition. And I am telling you plainly, the name of Jesus, spoken with alignment, closes doors we could not reopen, not sometimes, consistently. That is the final truth. You now understand what many believers never realized. Your last word before sleep is a declaration of ownership. Tonight, you will not end your day casually. You will say Jesus with surrender, authority, and alignment. Comment Jesus right now as a declaration. Share this message with every believer you know because ignorance is vulnerability. You watched until the very end for a reason. This was not information, it was activation. Walk in authority, sleep in dominion, and let no darkness negotiate what has already been sealed.